Hello, Steve White, Trek Boy 89 for Steve Arts 89. Well, it is the 50th anniversary of Star Trek this year. Actually, it's the 60th anniversary of Star Trek, because Star Trek was created in 1964 when they did the first pilot. The second pilot was in 65. And the series started in 66, which is what is acknowledged as, the anniversary of Star Trek, because that's when it was given to the public, But it was created 2 years before that. But the creator of Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, he has a lot of haters. It's something that is a reasonably new phenomenon outside of the production. There are a lot of people who just don't like that Star Trek, which they view purely as a vehicle for representation and diversity, not as a science fiction show, set in a utopian future where representation and diversity are just natural. They have issues with a straight white male having created Star Trek, and it's really weird because that wouldn't occur to anyone else. But it's become a thing, and they've tried to give Lucille Ball the credit of creating Star Trek. Now, she owned the studio that produced Star Trek, but she didn't create it. And she barely greenlit it because she actually thought it was a different show. But once she saw what it was, she liked it, and she did keep producing it, even though the money men told her, you're losing money, you're wasting money on this. She liked it, she kept it going for the first year. And then she sold the studio, and Paramount tried to cancel it, forever after, because they didn't want it. But they ended up keeping it going for 2 more years because of the fan support and probably some existing contracts they would have had to pay their way out of. But people try to attribute Gene's creation of Star Trek to Lucille Ball or Gene Coon, who came on and did a lot of work on the show afterwards. And it's really frustrating and strange. And the other thing, because like I said, this wasn't new within the production of people hating Gene, because he had a unique way of working, he had a unique vision, and he would not compromise. And people didn't like that. People don't like it when you say no. People don't like it when you make them do something they don't want to do, even if it's the right thing or what you have to do. So he would often get ideas and have a writer write the script, and then he would take the script to other people, would have them give notes and rewrite it. He'd rewrite it himself. And this was not about credit or royalties or it was just purely a matter of making sure the show was the best it could be. And his way of doing that was what worked for the original series. So he continued that with Next Generation. And a lot of very sensitive, very small men were very threatened by, having their work revised or rewritten, even if it actually, benefited and you ended up with a better episode. So a lot of people hated Gene for that, and also they hated him because, like I said, he had a vision and he would not compromise. And in his vision of Star Trek, his utopian future, his vision of the future, there was no war, there was no fighting between people. Earth was a peaceful place, and the Federation was a peaceful society. And we went into the future, and that's where we found the conflict. And it was always outside of us. But smaller men with no vision had trouble with this. And people with less talent who had trouble working within those parameters because they weren't talented enough to write within those parameters without being incredibly challenged. Because they just had very simple ideas of just, conflict is just, people fighting about anything and everything, and drama, you just spin it out of anything. Star Trek asked for more than that and expected more than that, and the fans expected more than that, and Gene expected more than that. And when people couldn't deliver that, they weren't tolerated. And I don't blame Gene or anyone else on the staff. But so there are a lot of unhappy writers with in the original Star Trek and the Next Generation, particularly the Next Generation. And they couldn't wait to get rid of Gene. And when he got sick, they were happy. And when he died, they were really happy. And they basically took Star Trek over, and they changed it to what they thought Star Trek should be, which was a more generic space drama, less focused on science fiction and science fiction stories, and with interpersonal conflict that regular people could relate to, because that's sort of, what society is like today. And they've pushed that even further with Star Trek Discovery, where now the Federation is the enemy, and the Federation is racist, and the Federation is against immigrants, and the Federation is against synths, and all these things that weren't part of Gene's vision and weren't part of Star Trek's future which fans loved, which fans fell in love with because it was this future they could imagine living in, that they wanted to live in because it was better than how things are today, and we had grown and changed and everything had gotten better. This universe that started with Next Generation, the third season of Next Generation after Gene passed, and well, Star Trek 2 really started it actually, but Next Generation, that sort of version of Star Trek, which is a very generic version of Star Trek, was a lot more like your basic science fiction shows where it's just, the government is bad, it's dystopian, and people are always fighting, and it's just no better than today. And all the problems we have today have just gone to the future, and that's just part of humanity. Humanity is just flawed and damaged and hurtful and ugly and hateful, and we just have to deal with that the best we can. That's sort of what most science fiction tells us, which is a bleak vision of the future, a bleak, cynical opinion of humanity, and it's a degradation of Star Trek to be that, and to be reduced to that, and to be depicted as that. And that's something, sadly, that's happening, has been happening since the third season of Next Generation, especially with the creation of Deep Space Nine, which was pro-war, pro-religion. Yes, I know people saying, how do you say it's pro-war? It showed how evil war was. I'm like, no, it validated war by saying it was a necessity. And that all those bad things just came with it. And they were just a necessary drama and suffering that humanity had to go through, because that's just who we were. And that wasn't Gene's vision, and that wasn't what Star Trek was. So Deep Space Nine is the anti-Star Trek Star Trek. Yes, it's a beautifully written, well, developed quality science fiction show, but it's not really Star Trek. It worked within Star Trek to dismantle Star Trek. They found ways to compromise, like they couldn't make the Federation evil, so they had to work with another government that was evil or flawed, like the Bajoran government and the Cardassians, and that was their way of saying, well, we've got two crews from different organisations working together. They did the same thing with Voyager with the Marquis, and they dropped that right away and just allowed them to become Starfleet and have Voyager be more like Next Generation and more of an actual Star Trek series, which is why I like Voyager more than Deep Space Nine for sure. Enterprise, I loved Enterprise. It was going back to the early pioneering days of the Federation where they were out exploring space and they were the first out there. And it's a great show. I loved it in the day. I'm not one of those revisionists who say, oh, it's great now that the public sort of opinion has turned. I loved it back in the day. I watched it every week, and it was amazing. It was the first Star Trek show I got to watch week to week that wasn't already available on video or already been syndicated for years or something like that. It was like a new show. Although the last season we did get on DVD about 4 episodes before the series had ended, so I'd already seen the last 4 episodes or 3 episodes before on DVD before I actually watched them live on TV. But I did watch them live on TV so I could watch the last episodes live. But so I just want to talk about that for a minute, just about Gene Roddenberry. He created Star Trek. He did an amazing thing. He had an amazing vision, and lesser men with lesser vision have tried to reduce this, demean this, and bring it down to their level, the level they could work at, because they're just small, sad little people. And that continues now with the culture wars and everything, where now Gene Roddenberry is seen as a pariah within the creation of Star Trek because he's a straight white male, and some people are that messed up. Other people, I don't know, they like drama, they like to fixate on the fact that he had failed marriages. There's some other things that were alleged that happened. I don't know if any of it's true, so I'm not commenting on any of it. But even if that's the case, artists, creators, people, they have foibles, and that doesn't take away from what they create and what they art. You just have to separate them. And if someone has a bad relationship or a drug addiction or something like that, or some issue, it really doesn't have anything to do with the show and the creation of the show and the art. So people who focus on that and say, well, they try and use that to invalidate the actual show or what that person contributed or what they created or that they were the creator. It's really frustrating to see people do that. So I just wanted to comment on that. Just wanted to celebrate Gene Roddenberry for a minute and sort of call out the people who are just small-minded, people with no vision, who were really threatened by someone who had a vision that was hard to maintain, and it was easier to just try and do generic science fiction and a lot of people who have trouble really appreciating Star Trek, who just want it to be generic science fiction, just ray guns and, you know, hot alien chicks that they can just, you know, watch in action, and, you know, it's just sad, those people. So I just had to comment on that, and I'm going to go. Feel free to share, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you think of Gene Roddenberry, his creation of Star Trek, his contribution to science fiction and humanity, and the people who hate him and, you know, are jealous and petty and, yeah, obvious and basic. I'm going to go. Bye.